the reactions in your brain aren't just rely on the input of information you're processing of that, your input of whether it's sight, sound, etc., and your processing of that information. And part of that information you're processing is what is socially acceptable in this interaction. And
I would insist, if you're honest and look at your life, it's your relationships with people that are based on free will that are the most exciting things in your life. And I would insist, if the young style of Jesus Christ, he never sinned once. In John chapter 8, Jesus looked in the face of his enemies and said, "Which one of you can prove me guilty of sin?" And his enemies were silent. So the lifestyle that Christ lived is unmatched. When you look at some of the sexual practices of Muhammad, they contradict what Jesus taught and how he lived. So you've got to make a decision. The character of Jesus Christ, is it so stellar, so pure, that it demands my trust? I think the obvious answer to that is yes. Second test for Christ, the content of his teaching. The Sermon on the Mount is ethical genius. Whoever gave the Sermon on the Mount is an ethical genius. Well, it was Jesus Christ. So when you read the ethical teachings of Christ, you've got to walk away saying, whoa, amazing. Thirdly, you watch him die at the moment of most excruciating pain as he's nailed to a wooden crossbeam. Instead of cursing his enemies the way I would have, he prays, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Wow, that's amazing. But fourthly, and most importantly, 3 days after Jesus died, he rose from the dead. And over a period of 40 days, he appeared to over 500 people who saw him risen from the dead. That historical resurrection sets Christ apart. Now, the third point in answer to your excellent question is, if it is true that the reason I'm a Christian is because I grew up in a Christian culture, then what you're saying is, the reason you are whatever you are is because you grew up in that type of culture. So if you're a secularist, the reason you're a secularist is because you grew up in a secular culture. Now, in my observation of human beings, those who I respect most, like the Gandhis, Dr. Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, those people contradicted their culture. They were heroes, and they brought about change. So the idea that I have to follow my culture in every way is not true. Now, does my culture impact me profoundly? Yes, ma'am. Of course it does. It's obviously why I'm dressed the way I am. Okay? So yes, culture and community impact us, but no, we're not slaves of our culture. Now, if a culture says, Cliff, in order for you to be part of our group, you have to murder. We're obviously talking about mafia culture, a gang culture. Do you think that it's wrong for me to murder, even though my culture is saying, in order for you to be accepted, you got to murder? I would insist all of us know down deep that regardless of whether our culture says murder is good, it's still wrong. We have rational minds. We have consciences that we can use to critique our culture. And we don't have to go along with our culture. And if you want to be part of a mafia culture or a gang culture, and in order to be accepted in that culture, you have to murder, I think that's a tragic mistake. Does that make any sense?
We're just going to have to agree to disagree.
Okay, what do you think?
I don't know about the whole culture part, but just your reasons for Jesus Christ, for you, or believing in him over Muhammad,
right.
I mean, you're basing his purity already on the fact that you believe in Christianity, that you sinned based on Christianity, but Muhammad might be pure for Muslims. I don't...
No, ma'am. I don't base my view of Jesus on Christianity. I base my view of Jesus on the source documents, the New Testament Gospels. I don't base my view of Muhammad on 9/11. That would be narrow-minded bigotry. I base my view of Muhammad by reading the Quran and finding out, what did Muhammad teach? How did Muhammad treat people? So no, ma'am, that is not accurate to say that I turn to Christianity for my information about Jesus. I deplore the Crusades. I deplore the Inquisition. I deplore the Salem witch trials. I deplore all those Christian ministers that preached that the Bible teaches slavery is good, right here in Texas for years. That is deplorable. But what you've got to realize is that is not what the Bible teaches. That's not what Jesus taught. That is how Christianity has been perverted. And the same is true with Islam. To say, as some people have said to me, oh, Cliff, all I need to know about Islam is 9/11. That's sick thinking. That's bigotry. You want to find out about Muhammad, you don't go to 9/11 and see what some terrorists did to the World Trade Center. Instead, you better be open-minded enough to go to the Quran and find out, what did Muhammad teach? How did Muhammad treat people? And then you better make your decision on whether to trust Muhammad or not trust him based on who Muhammad was, not based on how Muhammad has been misrepresented by certain terrorist organizations like ISIS. And so, the same is true for Jesus. You better go to the source documents, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, if you claim to be an open-minded, tolerant thinker. And you better read those Gospels for yourself. And then you better ask yourself, does the historical evidence of the way Jesus treated people, what he taught ethically, how he died, and how he rose from the dead, does that point to Christ being reliable, or does it point to Christ being a quack? And if your conclusion is, the evidence is Christ is a quack, you better reject him. But if the evidence is that Jesus Christ is totally reliable, then you'd better put your faith in him, because he's the truth the way he claimed to be. Does that make any sense?
Sure. Thank you.
What would you attribute to the rise in moral relativism in younger students or college students?
Good question. The appeal of moral relativism is strong for all of us. Moral relativism deifies my opinion. It's the exact temptation that Satan threw at Adam and Eve. Hey, guess what, Adam and Eve? If you eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you'll be like God. In other words, you'll be defining what's right and what's wrong. In other words, don't trust God to define what's right and wrong. You define what's right and wrong. Now, sir, that is tremendously attractive to me. I love to be the center of the universe. I love it when my opinion is respected by everybody and everybody agrees with me. I love to deify my own opinion. And so that's right there part of the power of moral relativism. It's the quickest way I know to deify my own opinion. Now, when you look at Jesus Christ and when you see how he treated people, gosh, I wish I treated people that well. I haven't. But he did. So his integrity is amazing. Secondly, when you read his ethical teachings, they have the ring of truth about him. In my best moments, I usually agree with Jesus. In my worst moments, I don't. I disagree. Then when you look at him dying on a cross, loving and forgiving his enemies, I've tried to forgive my enemies. It is incredibly hard for me. I have to do it over and over and over again if someone's hurt me bad enough. He forgives his enemies. But then when he rises from the dead, and over a period of 40 days, he appears to over 500 people who see him risen from the dead, all of a sudden, I'm a fool. I'm an idiot if I don't trust him. Why? Because the evidence is he is so much more credible, trustworthy, reliable than I am. Is my main problem in life, I just really don't know the right thing to do? No, sir. My real problem is, I know what the right thing to do is, and I don't do it. That's why I need Christ. You see, Jesus did not divide the world into the good people and the bad people. Good people on one hand, bad people on the other. He didn't do that. Instead, Jesus divided the world into those people who are self-righteous, do not acknowledge their need for God, versus those who are humble and realize, I need God's help. That's why Jesus started the Sermon on the Mount with the words, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." To be poor in spirit means I realize I'm not better than you. I'm not better than anybody. I have a real problem with evil. God, have mercy on me. Help me. I need your grace. And that's what Jesus Christ offers. And I think a lot of us know this intuitively. We hate religious hypocrisy. We hate someone who pretends to be superior and to have their act together. And, oh, I'm a better person than those wicked people over there. Oh, give me a break. You put yourself in their circumstances growing up in the home they did, you'd probably be doing the same thing, man. But when we meet someone who really understands, I've done evil, I got a problem with evil, and I want to grow. Wow, that's impressive. Well, that's what Jesus Christ says is so important. Get in touch with your own moral fallibility. Don't hide behind some self-righteous, hypocritical religious game.
No.
Acknowledge that you're a sinner. And Christ says, I bled and died on a cross to forgive you, to reconcile you to God, and to give you eternal life. That's exciting.
Yeah, evolution doesn't function until life already exists. So it's an entire non sequitur to bring up origin at all.
The reason I have to do that is because on every single university campus that I've spoken on for the past 39 years, some students and occasionally some faculty have argued that the reason they are an atheist is because evolution explains everything.
That's stupid. Sorry.
I happen to agree with you.
As someone who doesn't believe in God, that's a terrible position.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, and then like a little bit further along in that conversation, we were talking about how altruism cannot be explained by evolution, by contrast, and I do disagree with that.
Okay.
This kind of ties in a few different points that have been made, so sorry, bear with me. So you brought up that if this thing is just a chemical reaction in our brain and that it's not real,
right,
et cetera, to me, if our experience of reality is based on chemical reactions in our brain, regardless of whether God exists or not, that's still a real feeling. I still really love my mom, and the knowledge that interacting with her increases the serotonin and oxytocin in my brain doesn't change the fact that I genuinely love her, because those chemical reactions are my experience of this thing we call reality.
Okay, when you say, I love my mom,
Yes.
who's the I and what is love?
I am the being that exists inside of this body, and the love is just the interactions, the emotional response I have to her in the regards of how I feel how I should respond to her actions, my consideration for her well-being in my daily life, like how I go about my relationship with her is what that love is.
Okay. I would argue that if there is no God, the person who believes that is limiting reality to matter and energy.
Okay.
Which means there is no I that is separate from the chemicals.
I agree.
Okay? So I is not a person, I is chemicals.
I am a person composed of chemicals.
That's all. You're just your chemicals, right?
I have yet to find sufficient reason to believe otherwise.
Okay.
I am leaving room open to, because I know I don't know everything, I leave room open to change my mind.
Okay, well, I respect that. I hope that's true for me as well, right? We want to follow wherever the evidence leads.
I didn't mean to imply that you don't.
Oh, no, I know you did. It's a delight talking with you, sir. I really appreciate it, okay? All right. My experience and observation is that my wife does not have to love me.
Agreed.
The amazing thing about my wife is that she chooses to love me in spite of the way I misbehave at times. I would insist that that is a free decision my wife makes.
Okay.
I would insist that My dad did not have to spend time with me and love me.
Yeah.
My dad could have been a deadbeat dad. My dad could have lost his life in the business world in Manhattan where he worked, the way a lot of my classmates' dads did, and ignore me the same way my buddies' dads ignored them. They got up early in the morning, went into Manhattan, came back late at night, didn't spend time with their kids, didn't really have any interest in it. Kind of a negligent dad. My dad chose to spend time with me, to love me. I would insist he didn't have to.
Yeah.
All right? Let's say that I see a guy walking around the corner of that building. He's got a little bit of balding hair, got a big stack of books under one arm, and when I see him, I haul back and hit him as hard as I can. I'm hauled into a court of law, and the judge says, "Cliff, what did you do?" That was a professor. He was walking around the corner with his books, going to class, and you just haul back and hit him? And if I were to say, Your Honor, when I was a little kid, my dad had a little bit of hair, and he would abuse me by picking up a book and slapping me over the head. And when I saw that professor, he just so reminded me of my dad that I had to haul back and hit him. See, the legal system in the United States is based on the freedom of the individual to choose. And the judge is going to look me in the face and say, "Well, Cliff, I'm sorry that your father abused you that way, but you had no right to slam a professor because he reminded you of your abusive dad. And here's the penalty." See, that's based on a view of humankind that says you're not just a complex chemical reaction, you're a human being with a free will, which means you are responsible for the decisions you make.
To me, being a conglomeration of chemical reactions doesn't take away from the fact that there are consequences to our actions. Like I don't see how those things are mutually exclusive, or how that's answering the question of what love is.
I'm sorry. The only thing that's mutually exclusive is if I'm just chemicals, I don't have a free will. I just do what my chemicals program me to do. It's the behaviorism of B.F. Skinner.
And part of the chemical reactions in the process of your brain to reach the results that you enact with your body is the laws of the land, the things that we have decided as a society are acceptable. So, sorry, I am admittedly jumping to the end to kind of reel it back in.
That's okay.
Because I've heard this argument several times of if we don't accept free will, if we're just chemical reactions, we can't hold anyone accountable for their actions. But for me, the reactions in your brain aren't just rely on the input of information, your processing of that, your input of whether it's sight, sound, etc., and your processing of that information. And part of that information you're processing is what is socially acceptable in this interaction. And
I would insist, if you're honest and look at your life, it's your relationships with people that are based on free will that are the most exciting things in your life. And I would insist, if the young lady who you've been dating and has said, "I love you," if your dad calls you up tonight and says, "I have been paying him $1,000 a week to love you," I don't think you're going to sit back and say, "Oh, that's cool." I don't think so.
yeah, because
So
you
allow
entirely
you-
changed the situation.
No, I think there's more to it than that. Come on, man. You know very well that you treasure love. And if love is paid for by your dad for someone to love you, that is going to radically alter your relationship.
I got a question right there.
Yes, sir.
You say we got free will and all that.
Right.
Why is it that every time something bad happens, people consider that evil, but when something good happens, that's something from God?
No, sir. If I feed her lunch, I did a good deed. If I smack her, that's an evil deed.
Why?
Why?
Yes.
Because she's a precious human being created in the image of God. Not because she's Asian. She's not valuable because she's Asian. She's valuable because she's a human being created in the image of God. And God don't make junk. He makes human beings.
But you
And if
just
I
said-
degrade her, that's evil.
But listen, you just said earlier that God separated the people, right?
What?
You said he
I never said
separated.
that.
You said he has people over here, and then there's people over here. You said you switched it up.
No, I
forgot the word
didn't.
You did.
You misunderstood. All right? I never said that once. I said all human beings, be they Mexican, Caucasian, Latino, African American, African, We all have value. Why? Not because our culture says we have value.
No, 'cause
That's a
basic human
ridiculous argument. We're valuable because God created us in His image, and God don't make junk. He makes precious, valuable human beings.
So then why are there children dying, at such a young age in, poor countries? I mean, why are there people experiencing so much more suffering than, we are here? I mean, we're very blessed to be here today. We're not blessed in the image of God. I mean, we're living a better life than a lot of poor children dying in Africa. I mean, why are we more valuable than them in God's eyes? Or are we not? Please correct me if you disagree.
I would strongly disagree with you that all Westerners are living better lives than all Africans or South Americans.
Really?
I think that's really absolutely wrong.
Wait, let's take an average and then answer his question.
Okay,
The average
I am
person
convinced that material wealth is not an accurate description or a way to evaluate
What
a
about
successful life.
What about lifespan?
All right? What about lifespan?
Is that an accurate way to measure standard of living of like?
A standard of living, yes. But the value of a human life, the success of a human life, absolutely no way. And you see, that is one of the contradictions between Jesus and our culture. You're right. Our culture says you're valuable, you've got a successful life if you're comfortable, and Jesus Christ contradicted the meaninglessness, the absurdity, the emptiness of atheism and agnosticism. And Christ said, no, life is not a cheap, dirty trick. Life is not a trip from the hospital you're born in to the hospital you die in, and ultimately insignificant. Christ says that God gave you life for a purpose, and that purpose is to love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So the first way to find out what your purpose in life is to put your faith in Christ and say, all right, Lord, you've given me this amazing gift of life. You've affirmed the value and significance of my life. Now, what do you want me to do? Now, if you're a follower of Christ at UT Austin, you understand God gave me a rational mind. It's the most powerful muscle I have, and I am to develop that rational mind. Study hard. Why? To justify my existence by the size of my paycheck? No. Instead, to use the gifts and talents that God has given me to make this messed up world more like heaven will be it as a civil engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, a carpenter, a plumber. And that was one of Dr. Martin Luther King's points to the street cleaners in Memphis, Tennessee. You clean those streets for the glory of God. And don't you dare let your society, your culture tell you that you're inferior because you're just a street cleaner. Baloney. Your value has nothing to do with the size of your paycheck or the size of your stock portfolio or the ladder that you've achieved climbing the corporate ladder. The rung. No. You're a human being created in the image of God. God don't make junk. He makes human beings. Now He's given you gifts and talents. Use those to glorify Him. What does that mean? It means to find your ultimate satisfaction in Him. And then to use your talents to help people, to serve people, to make this messed up world more like heaven will be. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, thank you.
You bet. Thank you for raising that issue.
Most of God's commandments make sense, like don't steal from people, don't kill anybody, don't lie, because it hurts people and it brings unhappiness into the world, right? So when God forbids homosexuality, what's His reason for that?
Okay, good question. For the past 30 years that I've been speaking on university campuses, the most highly organized group has been the LGBTQ group. And I have gotten a lot of emotional heat from them. All right? And so I begun to think about why. Why do people get so ticked with me when it comes to discussing homosexuality? And I began to realize, as I listen to people, that they're saying to me, Cliff, when you tell me that the Bible says that sex is to be enjoyed between a man and a woman till death parts us, you're attacking my freedom, you're attacking my love, and you're attacking tolerance. But here's the irony of that. Freedom is based on God giving you and me a soul, a mind that is free. Guys, if there is no God, determinism wins the day. If there is no God, when I fall down a flight of stairs, I should pick myself up at the bottom and say, phew, I'm glad that's over. It had to happen. Freedom is the understanding that you have a soul, a personality, a rational mind. And by exercising your rational mind responsibly, you can make great decisions. I was speaking at the University of New Hampshire, and right there in the stone over the library entrance was, "The truth shall set you free." Who on earth do you think said that? Wasn't Socrates, wasn't Plato or Aristotle, and it wasn't Bertrand Russell, it was Jesus Christ. Freedom basically comes from the God who created you as more than a batch of chemicals. You're a human being with a soul, a mind, emotions, a free will. Secondly, love. Guys, if there is no God, love is just a chemical reaction. Ladies, if there is no God, that guy doesn't love you. He should honestly say, "You sexually excite me, and I want to have sex with you." Or, "Mom and Dad don't love me." Instead, they have a biological drive to preserve the genetic pool. "Oh, well, you see, we're just all genetically hardwired that we have to do things." Really? Well, I've worked with a lot of deadbeat dads, and I've worked with a lot of very responsible dads. And guess what? I don't think you have to be a deadbeat dad, and I don't think you have to be a loving dad. You choose how you're going to respond to your spouse, to your children. So you see, love demands God. And that's why when people get so heated with me about, "I can't believe you don't think homosexuality is a viable option," what they're really saying is, "Look, man, we really love each other. We happen to be of the same sex, so what's wrong? You're attacking our love." No, sir. Love comes from God. We're not attacking love. We're not attacking freedom. And we're also not attacking tolerance. If you put your faith in Jesus Christ, you're putting your faith in the one who, as he's nailed to a wooden crossbeam, prays for his enemies, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." There is no greater example of tolerance in this world than Jesus Christ as he dies on a cross. Tolerance is not, "Wow, you gave me $100, I'm going to tolerate you." No, that's not tolerance. Tolerance is, "You have hurt me," or "We disagree. But in spite of the fact that you hurt me, in spite of the fact that we disagree, I still respect you, and I will treat you with dignity." That's true tolerance. Well, that is exactly what Jesus Christ calls all of us to do, to treat each other with tolerance. And so my homosexual friends say, "Oh yeah, but Cliff, you really just don't respect my freedom, my love, and my tolerance." That's false. I have to say to my homosexual friends, "Look, buddy, your freedom and your love and your tolerance, they're all gifts from God." So now the question becomes, what is the purpose for which God gave us our sexuality? And obviously in Genesis 2:24, in the creation mandate of sexuality, we read, "For this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." So that's God's purpose in giving us our sexuality. So that means, guess what? I'm a sexual pervert. I have perverted the gift of sex that God gave me. How? Through my heterosexual lust. I have twisted that gift. And my homosexual friends have twisted the gift of sex that God has given them through their practice of homosexual sex. But Jesus Christ bled and died on a cross to forgive both of us. And now I've got to repent of the way I've perverted and twisted sex. And the same is true for all of us. Because I think it's just about 99% of us have in some way twisted and perverted that gift of sex that God gave us. Does that make any sense?
I agree with what you're saying, but you haven't really answered my question on why he said it's not allowed.
Okay, ultimately, I do not know why God created male and female, and why God created us for the purpose, when it comes to sexual intercourse, of one man committed to one woman till death parts them to enjoy sex within that context. Ultimately, I do not know. But as I look at love, I begin to realize the tendency of love is to bind itself. Which means, if I say that I love you, woman, and I'd like to have sex with you, and then tomorrow I'd like to have sex with somebody else, and then next week I'd like to have sex with somebody else, I am violating the love that God created me to have. Because love in its nature has a tendency to bind itself. In other words, to make a commitment. Now, why would that be? Because of loneliness. God created our sexuality and created marriage because he saw that man was alone and that it was not good. And so God creates woman to be a suitable helper for man, man to be a suitable helper for woman, and then within the context of love, commitment, and trust, loneliness is replaced with companionship. And so ultimately, marriage and our sexuality is a reflection of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, who love each other throughout eternity and are committed to each other. And so he creates us to learn to make promises. When a man and a woman promise to be committed to each other till death parts us, what does that produce? Tremendous security. What's it like to be a child growing up in a home where mom and dad do not love each other, where they fight, where they divorce? It's obviously pain off the charts. And so, Jesus Christ says, I want to protect you. I want to bring you into a life of security. God loves you, but you also learn to love one another and to make a commitment to each other. And be it promiscuous sex, or be it homosexual sex, even monogamous homosexual sex, Jesus and the Bible insist that is not what God intended when he created our sexuality. How have I not answered your excellent question?
You've mostly answered it, but suppose two men or two women commit to be with each other for the rest of their lives. What have they done wrong?
Good question. I ultimately don't know why a monogamous homosexual relationship is wrong, according to the scriptures in Christ. All I know is that it violates the purpose for which God created our sexuality, which is outlined in Genesis 2:24. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and the two shall become one. See, what you've always got to ask yourself is, be it, what should I do with my life, or what should I do with my sexuality? You've got to ask yourself the question, God, if you exist, what is the purpose for which you gave me the gift of life? God, if you exist, what is the purpose for which you gave me my sexuality? So I was at Northwestern University, and a group of basketball players said, guys, Cliff, you got to be kidding me. We're going to have sex with any good-looking pair of legs we can hop into bed with. And don't you dare attack our masculinity by telling us that sex outside of marriage is wrong. And at the same time, the homosexual group was there. And they said, Cliff, don't you dare tell us that homosexual sex is wrong, because we're gay. And I had to look at those two groups and say, look, guys, I understand you got a lot of different desires. But according to Jesus Christ, God created sex to be enjoyed between one man and one woman till death parts us. Yeah, but Cliff, you don't understand. This is my natural drive. Oh, I do understand. I hope you don't think my natural heterosexual sex drive motivates me to have sex with just one woman. No way. I hope you understand that when I was a little kid playing in a sandbox and a kid threw sand in my face, do you know what I naturally did? I never saw this behavior modeled. I picked up a big metal truck and slammed the kid over the head. You see, just because we have natural drives does not make them right. We have to ask the deeper question, which is, what is the purpose for which God gave us the gifts that we have? Thank you, sir, for raising that issue.
Can you create your own morals as an atheist, or is it something that you need God for? That's my question.
You can create your own morals as an atheist, but you have to acknowledge they're relative. It's a prejudice, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I just don't understand. Like, it sounded like you were saying that you need God to, like, create a purpose for yourself, and I just don't think that's...
No, you're right. You don't need God to create a purpose. No. You're absolutely correct. But what you do need God for is if that purpose is objectively true. You see, if you're an atheist or an agnostic, you can say the purpose of my life is to love people. But tomorrow, if you say the purpose of my life is to hate people, that's not a mistake. It's not wrong, because it's all relative. You see, so that means if you're an atheist and you're going to be intellectually consistent, what you're going to have to acknowledge is, if today I choose to love you, great. If tomorrow I choose to hate you, great. One's not better, the other's not worse. It's all relative. In other words, Right and wrong and purpose in life for an atheist is a taste. Do you like the taste of broccoli better than the taste of peas? It's just a taste. It's not objectively a moral absolute, right? Does that make sense?
It sounds like, I think when people create like a purpose for themselves, they kind of like stick to it. And so it doesn't really make sense to me when you're saying that one day that you're gonna love someone and then the next day you're gonna hate them. Like, that's just not how people operate. You know what I mean?
Okay, how do people operate?
I just think that once you've carved out an objective for yourself, that you usually stick to it unless there's a reason that's like preventing you from achieving it.
Yeah. And my observation is, in my own life as well as in the lives of my friends, that although we can carve out a purpose for our lives, given the right temptation, it is very easy to cave in and change.
But
that's true for me. Pardon?
That's on you, like, as a person, you know? It just, I feel like you're giving it all up to, like, the higher being to create your moral code, when in reality, like, if you really want to stick to it, then you will stick to it. Does that make sense?
Well, sure. You've got a will. God has given you a free will. And you can make a decision and you can seek to stick to that decision. And my atheist friends are very moral people, very good people, who make a lot of responsible, ethical decisions. But the problem is, when my atheist friends insist that they are right in an absolute, objective sense, that's intellectually dishonest. They're not right in an objective sense, they're right in a subjective sense, according to my definition of right and wrong.
Right, but according to your definition, it's...
No, me for myself, you for yourself.
Oh, right.
Right?
Okay. Right, okay, that makes sense.
Right? Which means, if an atheist ever says, cannibalism is absolutely wrong, that is imperialism and that is arrogance. They should be saying, from my perspective, cannibalism is wrong. From your perspective, it might be right. I'm not right, you're not wrong. It's all relative. Make sense? And my point is, you can't live that out. My point is, none of my atheist friends live that out. All of my atheist friends are very moral people, and if someone comes and does evil around them, they say, you should not have done that. That was wrong. When they use the word should, they are contradicting their belief that everything's relative. And they're saying, come on, buddy, wake up and smell the coffee. You should not have done that. That was really wrong. No, it wasn't really wrong if you're an atheist. It's relatively wrong. Subjectively wrong. Does that make sense? See, and the existence of moral absolutes is one of the clearest pieces of evidence that some type of God exists. Because none of us can live out moral relativism consistently. And if you don't believe me, just get married. And your spouse is going to do something to you at some point, and you're going to look your spouse in the face and say, you should not have treated me that way. Stuart, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think every people group throughout the world, every civilization, there's a level of conscience and moral objectivity. So the conscience within us that says this is right, this is wrong, even if, like an earlier example that was made, altruism. Even if this does not benefit me in any kind of way, or even if I have to put my life on the line for somebody else, there's something in me that's telling me to do that. So in people groups, for example, I have a desire to hopefully save life or promulgate life, not to take part in evil and destroy life. An example would be, well, what about cannibals? They think it's good to eat people. Actually, sociological studies show that even cannibals, who may be the one exception for understanding what is truly right and wrong, even cannibals have to get to the point of discussing together in their group, looking at a human being and debasing them, debasing their personhood before they eat them. So even cannibals have an understanding of what is really good, what is really evil. Now, an exception would be, for example, someone who is really mentally ill or a serial killer. But that mental illness is the product of whether it's neurochemicals, environmental, and that person slips in to a tremendous mental anguish. Or a serial killer kills, and then God, we learn in Romans 1, might give them up to their evil desires, giving them over. They've seared their conscience in such a way where maybe they don't know what good and evil truly is. Maybe they mix. But every functioning human being, I believe, at their very base level, has a type of understanding of moral obligation. The shoulds, the oughts. I ought to do this. I should do this. I should not treat my neighbor in such a way where I'm cutting them off, or I'm lying to them. This is played out in the college classroom here at University of Texas. Problem is, almost the majority now of college students are buying into moral relativism. How is that played out practically in the classroom here at University of Texas? Well, 70%, a poll was recently taken at Harvard, college students said they would cheat on a test if they could get away with it, and if it could help them get to the next level above their classmates. Okay, that's pretty scary. And it's because these studies have shown an understanding of now my morality is determined by me. So what's ultimately wrong with it? I don't have moral objectives. There's no obligation to what's right and what's wrong. So moral relativism, if it's actually played out and followed through with, is pretty scary. That's why I believe we have to understand that moral objectivity from the transcendent realm is given to us, so we know truly I should not cheat on that exam because God has given me an understanding of what's right, what's wrong, so I'm not going to simply outdo my classmate to get ahead of him or her in life based off of my own desire to get ahead.